What's up, everyone? It is Thursday, October 26th, 2017, and this is Raphael Garcia back for episode 62 of the MMA Ratings podcast. I thank you for taking some time to listen to the show, whether you're listening to us live or listening to us after the fact. We appreciate you doing so. This is another opportunity for us to talk all things mixed martial arts. And yeah, we have quite a bit to talk about here. So, as always, I want to thank you again for taking the time to listen to our show. Be sure to like our content on YouTube, share it there, share it across all of social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you want to do. You can find us also on Stitcher, SoundCloud, and iTunes as well. So be sure to like our content on those platforms. And thank you again for listening to us each and every Thursday. My partner, Schwan Hume, is unable to join us today. He has daddy duties with a basketball meeting. So, his girls are out there trying to be the next Candace Parker and all that good stuff. So, I commend him on doing that first. I'm sure he's listening and I appreciate him doing that. But he will be back next week as usual. And we'll probably have quite a bit to talk about because we have a lot to talk about for this week. I want to look at UFC Fight Night 119, which is scheduled for this weekend. We have the return of the Dragon, Lyoto Machida, as he steps into the cage against Derek Brunson. We also have I can't even think of who else is fighting tonight. But I also want to talk about UFC 217, and there's some interesting aspects about 217 I want to talk about because not only do I want to the look at the fights themselves, but I also want to talk about what else is going on leading into the fight because there's been some interesting trash talk over the last few weeks, and there's trash talking that I kind of want to talk about because I want to know if it's going into the pathway of going too far. And I want to kind of talk about that because there's been some pretty interesting things that were said by Kobe Covington and Joanna Jacek, both leading into their big fights over the next few weeks. So let's start with let's go right into. I guess let's start with some news first and foremost because I think there's some interesting tidbits that came out. First and foremost was probably the one about UFC boxing, which was pretty interesting to me. I'm not sure if anyone ever saw this story that came out earlier this week, but there's talks about the UFC promoting boxing at some point in time in the near future. I'm not sure if you saw this, but the idea of Zuffa boxing, which it kind of got sparked initially when Dana White was wearing a Zuffa boxing shirt during the lead-in for McGregor Mayweather, which I'm sure everyone saw. But since then, it has come back up, and what was kind of the idea is that is Zuffa, which is the parent company of the UFC, interested in moving into different avenues beyond just mixed martial arts, and you can kind of see that when you look at UFC Fight Pass and the way the UFC is cultivating content there. This past weekend was EBI 13, and those events get more and more successful as they go on. They are now adding Polaris grappling events. They have Glory there. They have other MMA such as Invicta on that platform as well too. So it'll be interesting to see if they are going to look into doing boxing in a small scale as well, and adding that avenue of content to Fight Pass. I think it would be a good idea too. And on the MMA beat earlier today, they were talking about the idea of Zuffa Boxing uh, purchasing the rights to Top Rank and purchasing from a standpoint, purchasing the opportunity to play some of their old content on Fight Pass, which I think would be amazing because I think there is value there. It's pretty interesting. It's kind of a segue because this week, the earlier I think it was yesterday, WWE, which is kind of like one of the pioneers when it comes to this model of an online platform for combat sports, they reported that they had one of their biggest earnings moment in the last quarter because they have 1.5 million subscribers to the WWE network, and they're seeing ratings boost across all of their shows, which I think is definitely important there. So yes, we see that that is a major opportunity there because the opportunity to not only present combat sports in an on-demand aspect, but present it in a form where people can get exposure to new avenues of combat sports definitely continues to allow old and new fans to get involved in the avenue, I guess, in the sports industry. And with the idea of Zuffa boxing being a thing, I'm not upset with Zuffa kind of diversifying their portfolio. When you look at it, I mean, that is an aspect of success. Can you present multiple avenues of revenue? You tap into multiple different sports, I guess, sports dynamics. And that's something that I would be interested in seeing what they plan on doing, if it is a thing. Like right now, it is all just basically a assumption and speculation because nothing's been put together in a formulaic method. So we'll see what happens. But it is interesting to talk about. It is interesting to kind of grow with. So yeah, let's keep a close eye on that and see what happens over the next few weeks and kind of see how the UFC responds to it. Bob Arum is already chiming in, taking shots at Dana White, and I mean, that's Bob Arum. He's been a man to say some pretty interesting things, some pretty callous things over the last few years about mixed martial arts. So, he had his own things to say about Mayweather McGregor as well. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I think that this is another way for Zuffa to continue winning when it comes to combat sports. So, and too much time on that. That's kind of like the main news story that I wanted to cover in the sport this week because we have two pretty big cards, one this week and one next week. And I want to talk about a couple of things first and foremost when it comes to UFC Fight Night 119. Obviously, we have Lyoto Machida versus Derek Brunson, and I think this is a very important fight for both of those men. I mean, Machida is, man, how old is this guy now? He is 39 years old, stepping into the cage after a 2-year suspension, which a lot of people think was basically asinine, but he has been out of action since June 27, 2015, and he is still riding a 2-fight losing streak. He was stopped by Yoel Romero and stopped by Luke Rockhold. And I mean, he's won one of his last 4, losing to Weidman, Rockhold, and Romero before, and he's also defeated CB Dalloway. But he's 39 years old, stepping into the cage again, and you wonder at what does he have left? What type of athlete is stepping back into the cage? He looks good. I mean, he looked really good for the weigh-ins this week. He looked like he was focused. He looked like he's like, I don't want to say angry, but he really is chopping at the bit to get back in there, and that's always a good thing to see. It's kind of interesting. You compare it to the way a lot of people are describing how Donald Cerrone looked heading into his fight against Darren Till, and a lot of people talking about the way he looked overly relaxed or not necessarily didn't look. I don't want to say mentally prepared. He looked physically prepared, but he didn't look so mentally prepared. And a lot of people are attributing that to his downfall in that bout. But we aren't hearing the same thing said about Machida, which is always a good thing. He looks good, and he's facing Derek Brunson. And Derek Brunson is, I mean, I don't want to call him a prospect so much because he's been around in this fight game for quite a while now. And what, he's such an anomaly to me. He's such a conundrum. I mean, because this guy continues to do well when needed in the sport, but then when he runs into a dynamic athlete, I mean, he just loses. He has wins over Uriah Hall. He knocked him out, and he's defeated Lorenz Larkin. I think that was a controversial decision back at UFC 177, but he's dropped fights to Yoel Romero. He was winning that fight until he getting TKO'd in the third round. He lost to Robert Whitaker, and he lost a controversial decision to Anderson Silva. I mean, he could have a much better record within the UFC than he does right now. Right now, he is, since joining the UFC after being a part of Strikeforce, he's 8-3, which actually is not that bad. The UFC current, I wonder if they have him ranked. Let's see if they have him ranked. Wow. He is ranked at number 7 in the middleweight division. So if he can find a way to get a big win this weekend, I mean, that would do wonders for his career. I don't see him as someone who will ever necessarily become a true title challenger. Not that much, but he's always been right on the cusp. I mean, I still look back to that fight against Yoel Romero. He was doing so well at a time when everyone was expecting so much out of Yoel, and yeah, he has kind of hit that point where Yoel being a title challenger is definitely a sure thing. But man, Brunson had him on the ropes. He was definitely doing his thing for the first 2 rounds before getting stopped in the third. So you wonder, where is this guy's ceiling? Are we already experiencing that, or is he at a point where we can expect something more? And this fight against an older returning Machida is an opportunity to prove that point. Are we going to see him step out there and be better than he's ever been before? Or if he loses this fight, I think that kind of seals it away that he's not the real title challenger that we all kind of expected, not expected, but that we all wondered if he could reach. This is the type of main event that sets that stage, because it's time, like the lights are shining the brightest. You're in Brazil, you're fighting someone who is a superstar there, or I'm not going to say superstar, but someone who is a homegrown hero there, and a lot of eyes are going to be on just this aspect of the fight, just for Machida's return. So it's now either time to step up or fall down for Derek Brunson, and I think that time is upon us, and we'll see what happens. I know a lot of people are leaning toward Machida in this fight, and I would not be surprised. I tend to shy away from guys who have been away from the cage and been away from active competition for so long, for whatever the reason being, just because that time away definitely does impact you. I'm looking forward to just that fight itself, because I want to see what type of Derek Brunson steps into the cage. And another fight that really interests me is Damian Maia versus Colby Covington. And this is the fight that I talked about. I was excited about the minute it got announced. I think Colby Covington is a surging prospect in the welterweight division. I personally think that this could be a main event bout on any other card. I mean, even on this card itself, if I was the one planning, I would switch the Brunson Machida fight and make Maia Covington for the main event, because I want to see what it would look like over five rounds of action. Because Kobe's been running his mouth. He's been doing that a lot more lately, taking shots at Tyron Woodley. He's said some really disgusting things about Brazil this past week, actually, which is kind of what I want to talk about when it comes to fight promotion, and trash talk, because I definitely understand the reason why you trash talk your opponents. I'm fully supportive of that. I understand guys are trash talking their opponents to try to build up a fight, to try to build some type of recognition for themselves, to get people to watch when they step into the cage. That's where their money is made. But we cross a very ugly path when Kobe Covington is calling Brazilians animals and talking about the way they present themselves and the way they chant during the fight events. It's borderline. I don't want to call it borderline bigotry, but I mean it's just as offensive as some of the things Conor McGregor said when he was preparing to fight Jose Aldo and Rafael dos Anjos. It was just disgusting. And I am a fan of Kobe Covington. I think he is a great wrestler, a great athlete, but you don't really have to kind of cut to that aspect to get attention. Yeah, we're talking about him right now, but we're not talking about what makes him special as a fighter, what makes him an interesting fight for Tyron Woodley, for Jorge Masvidal, or a Stephen Thompson or Darren Till. We're not talking about him in that sense. We're talking about him making disgusting comments that don't really need to be in sports right now, especially with all the other things we have going on across sports and across society as a whole. It's really just kind of better to stay away from those type of comments. And I want to talk about some other comments that occurred within the trash talking space as well in a minute. But it's just unfortunate to see that. And he's facing someone in Damian Maia. Damian Maia might be just as old as Lyoto Machida. I think he's 38 to Machida's 39. Let me see. No, he's 39 as well. But he's someone that has shown an ability to go in there and shut guys up. I mean, he's done it all. I mean, he's continuously gone into the cage and he's finished guys one after another. Like, what his game plan is. You know what he's going to do when he steps into the cage, and he always does it time and time again. So it'll be interesting to see if Kobe Covington can stop that, knowing that Maia is going to go in there, try to take you down, and try to control you. We've seen it time and time again, and it's definitely something that I enjoy watching. Being a jiu-jitsu athlete myself, it's something I enjoy and appreciate. I think Kobe offers the ability to stop takedowns, which is definitely key, and he offers the wrestling ability to be able to remain in positions of control once he gets on top, which I also think is key if Damian Maia attempts to pull guard. We've seen in the past that he does not shy away from pulling guard to kind of get someone on the ground to begin working his jiu-jitsu, which is always dangerous. Kobe does have the ability to get on top and hold position there, but he's also aggressive as well, which I think is something that is very, very interesting to watch in this fight. It'll be interesting to see where his aggression lies. I don't expect him to take the same type of stance that Tyron Woodley took, and everyone is still upset about that fight, but he has an ability to be very aggressive. I mean, Dong Young Kim is a great grappler as well, great high-level judoka who I've always wanted to see compete against Damian Maia. But I mean, Kobe Covington basically dominated him. I actually think Dong Young Kim did a grappling match recently. Let me see. Just did one. Give me a second. So Keenan, I feel like Dong Young Kim. Yeah, Dong Young Kim is fighting DJ Jackson. It was last weekend. And I do not know who won that. Who won that? That is a. Let me see. So DJ Jackson and Dong Young Kim had a Nogi Super fight in Korea. last weekend, and I do not know who won. So let's find out real quick. But that just lets you know how dangerous of a grappler Dong Young Kim is. DJ Jackson won. He won by points, 2-0. So, but yeah, I mean, he goes out there and he's willing to compete against the best grapplers in the world. So that kind of lets you know what Kobe Covington is able to do, because Covington was able to control Dong Kim across 3 rounds and get a unanimous decision victory there. So that's probably the biggest name grappler he's faced. He has been submitted in the past. He was submitted by Warley Alves via guillotine, but he also, I mean, he dominated Mike Pyle, who's another great grappler in the game. So we'll see what he has for Damian Maia. I mean, it doesn't get better on the ground when it comes to Damian Maia. Maybe Jacare Souza, maybe Fabricio Verdum. I mean, you have very few names that can kind of keep up with Damian Maia when it comes to jiu-jitsu for MMA at this level. What we've seen some other guys that are coming up through the ranks, so we'll see how that goes. So I'm really interested in that fight, and it's unfortunate that Kobe had to kind of taint it, for lack of a better term, with some of the terms that he's used over the last few days. I just think that, like, man, you got to do better. I get what you're trying to do, but you have to do better than that, because it's an unfortunate way to promote yourself and get out in front of the fans, because no one really wants to. No one wants to see that shit. For lack of a better term, I don't want to. I know a lot of people don't want to. No one wants to see that shit, man. You can do better. You can do better. So that kind of helps me segue into some other interesting, I guess, words of trash talk that came out this week between Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Rose Namajunas. And this is probably this. I don't want to say disturbing. I don't want to use the say the term that this is more disturbing, but it was more. It was more of a. It was more difficult of a conversation when I saw what was said and the response to it. Um, Obviously, during the media call on, I think it was Wednesday of this week. Yeah, Wednesday. During the media call, Namajunas made a comment about being a better fighter mentally. And if you're unaware, Namajunas has spoken openly about her struggles from a mental standpoint with the fight game and with her everyday life. I mean, mental health is an important conversation point that a lot of people just aren't talking about. But she was open in talking about her issues. She was open in talking about some of her struggles. And her quote was basically, this is her quote on Wednesday during the media conference call. Really, what I've learned from the first title fight is I've just gotten better mentally. Namajunas said Wednesday, like, I've overcome some demons in my path, and just every day I wake up and I'm a fucking champion. So that's my mindset all the time, and that's something that I think this fight could be a great PSA announcement for mental health awareness. I think I'm a champion for that, and overcoming a lot of demons in my path, and I'm so much stronger from it, and I'm going to continue to be stronger. That is what Namajunas said. Again, as I said, she's been very open and very clear about her statements there. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But Jędrzejczyk being I mean this in the greatest of ways. She's such an antagonist in such a way. It's great. Like, she's a champion who, even from her face-offs, she gets in you can tell the little things she's doing to get into people's heads, get under their skin, and just kind of like either piss them off, make them doubt themselves a little bit, let them know that she is like the boogeyman that's coming to haunt them for the rest of life. She does it in such a way that's so perfect that I love it each and every time I'm seeing it. And this is her response. She says, hey, listen to yourself. You don't even want to do media. you don't want to do extra media. How do you want to be a champion and deal with all these things? You know what? You're not stronger mentally. You are mentally unstable and you are broken already, and I will break you in the fight. I mean, I don't even know how do you respond to that? How do you respond to a situation where she basically took Namajunas' statement and basically pulled it apart and like stuck a knife right into it. Namajunas goes on. She goes because people began asking what was her response to Yon Jacek's statement and how she was able to dig at her so in such a mental fashion. Namajunas goes, I'm not sure if it's maybe a cultural difference or something like that, but for me, it's something it's not something that's taken lightly. Speaking about the mental health issues, my family has been torn apart by this. My dad died, and he wasn't in my life because he has schizophrenia. So it's been something that my entire family has been fighting against since I can remember. So this fight means a lot to me, and it's not just about that belt. It's more than that. And I want to inspire other people to fucking do whatever the fuck you want to do and do what makes you happy and be a good person. You can overcome anything. And Jacek continued to poke at her, but Namajunas didn't respond. And it was such a great back and forth. Not even a back and forth, but just to say it's such a great dynamic that makes me want to see this fight so much more. And this is so different than the fake trash talk that you see, like going back to like a GSP and Josh Koscheck, some of the stuff that Conor McGregor said over the years. This is so much better than that because that is clearly contrite and clearly contrived, and it's clearly just not real. It's someone trying to build up something so people can want to make money and want to watch the fight. I get that. That has its place. This here feels much more real because you're going after something that's almost untouchable. Kind of like the way that Bethe Correia made the comment about Ronda Rousey's father committing suicide. It's like almost like this is something you can't touch, or this is something that is like an unspoken rule, but Yon Jacek went after it anyway, and it was just something that totally caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting this. And Namajunas' last statement was, "I might be crazy, but I'm dangerous too." That right there is a soundbite in and of itself. So I mean, you really like this. I hope someone caught the interview and caught the conversation back and forth to take these and turn them into sound bites, because we have more than a week. That fight is on the 4th, right? They're fighting on the 4th. I just want to be right. Just want to confirm. They are fighting on, yes, the 4th. UFC 217 on the 4th. And this is the type of commentary that would definitely help promote that fight. I'm not saying it would do major numbers or anything like that, because UFC 217 is projected to be lower than expected. But man, that sells this fight right there. That commentary, that back and forth, it sells this fight in a different fashion. Not necessarily saying that this is the wrong reason why you want to, but it makes it so much more intriguing. It builds up Namajunas as a story. Like, if she does win and if she does become champion, man, you have someone who is a champion of a cause right there, and this brings it to light. If Yon Jacek wins, this kind of continues building her mystique, building her legacy, and just making her much more of a dangerous, ominous figure for these women to face, especially as the conversation becomes with her moving up to 125. There's so many different aspects to that, but that commentary right there made me stop and pause and just shake my head and just say, yes, this is an amazing moment, and I was glad to be able to read about this and see what's next for these two women. But obviously, the main event of UFC 217 is between GSP and Michael Bisping, and I mean, yeah, I'm going to watch. True, I'm going to watch. Clearly, this fight doesn't interest me as much as the co-main event with Yon Jacek and Namajunas, and we're going to talk more about this next week when Shawan's back, and I can't wait to hear his insight on all these fights as well. But this feels like more of the UFC pushing a fight on fight fans to basically make money. Obviously, they're always trying to make money. That's the name of the game. But this just didn't feel right from jump, and it doesn't feel right now. It just seems like a money grab type of a fight. It holds up. Sorry about that, but this is definitely a fight that the UFC is trying to use to just kind of. I don't. It's holding up the whole division. Yeah, Robert Whitaker is hurt, but I'm not excited for this middleweight fight at all. I mean, who has I can't like who has he really he being Michael Bisping. I mean, he's just not. He's a champion, yes, but he's almost not the champion. He's kind of like a I don't. He deserves this position because he is who he's been. But I mean, it's been a year since he defended the title. He defended it once against Dan Henderson, a guy who was ranked number 15 in the division. Now he's defending the belt against a man who's never fought at middleweight and is coming off of a 2 year layoff as well. I mean, 2 year layoff. Let me see how long he was out the cage. 3. Whoa, 4 years. I did not. I man, 4 years since GSP has been out of the cage and also dealing with knee injuries as well. So he's facing someone who isn't a recognizable name. There's a lot of commentary going on right now about that, of whether or not GSP is the name that everyone thought he was or everyone expects him to be, which is understandable. It's been a long time since he's been out, and I'm interested in seeing what the buyer numbers are this weekend or next weekend, excuse me, what the per view rate buy rates are, because that'll tell you a lot. That'll tell you a lot, and I guarantee you, GSP will be making at least a million disclosed for this fight. Where's the fight? Let's make sure it's in an area where they disclose pay. Madison Square Garden, yes. So we will be able to find out what the pay is for this event. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I want to talk about when it comes to that fight itself, because you will have next week to kind of bounce some conversations back and forth. I don't even know, other than the co-main event, I don't know who else is fighting. You got Cody and TJ. We'll talk more about that next week. Stephen Thompson and Jorge Masvidal. We'll talk more about that. James Vick, Joseph Duffy. That's going to be a great fight. Mickey Gall's on that card as well. So we have quite a bit to look at for that fight itself, and we'll talk about it more that day, or we'll talk about it more next. We'll talk about it more next week during the show. So Yeah, what else do I want to talk about? I mean, that's really basically it that for this week. I didn't want to cover too much. It's a solo show today, so we're basically really quiet when it comes to this week. We will be back next week because Shawan and I will definitely be here to cover more content. So, as always, I appreciate everyone listening to the show. I appreciate everyone taking some time to listen to the MMA Ratings podcast. Again, be sure to like and share our content. You can see us on MMAratings.net. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter there as well. We're going to be doing better with Instagram coming up lately, so that's my fault. You can always follow our content leading into the fight game this week and fights this weekend and fights every weekend. We always have some good pieces between myself, Schwan, and Adam Hume, or Adam Martin. So be sure to, as always, follow our content. And again, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate all of our listeners. Thank you again for once a great week. And we're sorry we're having a short show this weekend, but I mean it's just kind of a packed night. And Shawan isn't here with me tonight, so I basically said all I've wanted to talk about. But we'll be back next week to recap from UFC Fight Night 119. Look forward to UFC 217 and just keep going from there. So thank you, everybody, and have a great night.